Hello and welcome to Fit After 40. Our guest today is Kevin Clark. Kevin is a triathlete as well as a swimming and running coach, cross-country coach, I think you said. And he is 42, so he is age appropriate for the podcast today. Kevin, welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm great. Thank you.
Yeah, well, good. So today we want to talk about triathlons. I mentioned in our last episode that I am training for my first ever triathlon, kind of a mediocre swimmer, so got that obstacle to overcome. But we've got the guy today to talk to. So let's start with the basics. So what is a triathlon?
So basically, just a disclaimer. I know there are a lot of people who will, well, not a lot of people, but whoever watches this, there may be somebody who wonders why I'm the one who is answering these questions because I am by no means any type of an expert. I'm not a professional triathlete. That means a certain specific thing that I am not and will probably never be. I'm just a very, very enthusiastic triathlete, as most of us are who get into this sport. And I, over the last maybe 5 to 7 years or so, I've started taking it more and more seriously and tried to learn as much as I can about it to improve myself. And it's been real motivating for me. And I try to share that with friends, family, anybody who's interested in fitness. That's why when a friend of a friend said that you were doing this podcast, I said, "Oh, that's great. I would love to encourage anybody as much as I can." That's sort of my goal with any
It's
social
great.
media presence or anything like that. Similar to I'm assuming you guys, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So a triathlon, very specifically, is any event, endurance event involving the disciplines of swimming, biking, and running, usually in that order, but not always. Most people who are involved in triathlon events or sports or anything like that are involved in other aspects of
Mhm.
endurance sports. They do running events, they do swimming events, they do biking events. So it's kind of like the culmination in a lot of ways of that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot tons of details and interesting little nuances to it, but that's basically what it involves.
I'm training right now for a sprint triathlon, and of course they go all the way up to the Ironman, and there's a lot of space in between. So the one I'm doing is I believe it's an 800-meter swim, a 20K bike ride, which for those Americans out there is about 12 miles, and then a 5K. So it's a pretty low hanging fruit. But of course, you've done some full Ironman. What are the distances there?
Okay, so yeah, there's basically four standard distances of triathlon. You are doing the sprint triathlon, which is very common, and there are many all over the place. And I encourage people to jump into one if they're curious about the sport. They involve usually exactly what you described to a greater or lesser degree, anywhere from a 500 yard to sometimes can be up to like a 1200-yard swim. Usually they're not any more than that. As
Mhm.
far as the swim, around a 20K 10-mile-ish bike, something around there, and usually a 3 mile or 5K run, depending on how they want to do it, but it's around a 5K run depending on the course. And that will take most people, including you. I'm assuming this is your first one. You're training for it, and it will take most people around an hour and a half to 2 hours to complete.
Sure.
For the real speedy people, it'll take around an hour, and for people who are sort of in the back of the pack, it might take a little more than 2 hours. But that's the general gist of like a sprint triathlon. And we'll get into sort of like what you can expect to train
Right.
for that and what's appropriate, who's appropriate to do it. Then you go up to what's called an Olympic distance triathlon, which they actually do in the Olympics, which consists of right around a mile swim. It's around
Yep.
well, no, actually, I checked that. Yeah, it's around a 1.5 kilometer, which is right around a mile swim. Then it's a 40K bike, which is right around 26 miles, 25 miles, depending on the course. And then a 10-kilometer run. And this is going to take most people around 2.5 to 3.5 hours to complete. There are not that many of these available to do, at least we're in North America. This is something that they used to have a lot more of. But It's not really something that's done all that often. There are Olympic distance triathlons. There's an Olympic distance triathlon, the Olympics, obviously. That's the one that they do for like show.
Sure.
But it's kind of right in this sort of no man's land where it's a little bit too much for a lot of people who might just be thinking about jumping into a triathlon. It's a, for most people, like I said, it's over a 3 hour endurance event. So that's a lot for someone to just jump into with no training. I wouldn't recommend that. And then it's a little bit too limiting for some people who are looking, like you said, to go a little bit longer, like up to the
Right.
Ironman distances. So there are some, but not that many Olympic distance triathlons, but they are fun. Then there is a 70.3 or what they call a half Ironman. I hope we don't get sued by the Ironman Corporation for me calling it that, but a 70.3 and a half Ironman are the same thing. The only thing is that if you are doing a race and you call it an Ironman, that is a very specific brand of
Yeah.
race, and they own a lot of races, and they are
Yeah.
very litigious. So,
Right.
if you're doing an Ironman 70.3, that is a specific type of experience. It entails a specific level of quality to the races and formality, which is good in a way and bad in a way. But 70.3 consists of a little over a mile swim. So the swim is about the same as Olympic distance. So for a lot of people, that's good. The swim doesn't go up that
Yep.
much, but the bike almost doubles. The bike is a 90 kilometer or 56-mile bike
Right.
ride, which again, for a lot of people is going to be a big step up in distance, and it finishes with a half marathon. So it's again about double what an Olympic distance would be.
Right.
So for most people, this is going to take anywhere from around 5 to 7 hours.
Sure.
Again, for speedier people, a little bit under 5 hours. For very, very speedy people, can do it in under 4 hours. And then for some people, they can take up to 8 hours to finish that. So it's a very big commitment, and involves for most people a large amount of commitment to training and to preparation and gear and stuff like that. And then the one that is probably the most talked about, the most vaunted, the most celebrated is the full iron distance or the full Ironman distance,
Yep.
which is the one some of you or your viewers or your friends, family have probably seen on television when they do the Kona, Hawaii
That's right.
Ironman. That is the most famous, most celebrated full Ironman distance race of all time. It is still done every year in Hawaii, and it is the world championships for at least the men or the women. Now they've separated it, and the other, one of the genders does it in a different space. But that entails, and everybody loves to say this, a 2.4 mile swim. It entails a 110-ish mile bike ride. Sometimes that's a little bit more or less, obviously,
Right.
depending on the course. And then it's a full marathon, 26 miles, 40 kilometers at the end of that. So you're looking at a massive, massive event, a massive undertaking and challenge for most people. This is going to take anywhere in the vicinity of over 13, 14 hours. I know the Ironman people say that you only officially really finish if you do it in 17 hours, which would mean for most races that you're finishing before midnight. But I have seen many videos of people who are finishing after midnight. So it can take
Yeah.
anywhere longer than that, depending on, if you want to stay after everyone else goes home.
Right.
So again, a massive commitment for most people, sort of a bucket list thing for most people, including myself. That was kind of my motivation. I said I do sprint triathlons. I had done
Hmm.
them for literally like 15 years. I had done a few sprint triathlons here and there. And I said, you know what, I should really do what some of my friends do and sign up for an Ironman and take it more seriously and really prepare properly and see what I can do. And that was about 5, 6 years ago at this point. So yeah, over that time, just I've been like a sponge. I've learned so much from so many different people at different levels of the sport that I would love to share.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing it with us. Um, so we're talking about the distances, but the events they're in order. It's you swim, then you bike, then you run, and that's for a reason, isn't it?
So the main reason there's two main reasons. One is
Hmm.
historical. Uh, the first triathlon ever, and a lot of this is probably apocryphal at this point, even though
Sure.
these people are still alive and they do still tell
Right.
these stories. But the original triathlon, one of the very first triathlons ever, was there was like a lieutenant in the Navy who was stationed in Hawaii, and he was like a fitness enthusiast. And he was a fitness enthusiast, and a bunch of his friends were fitness enthusiasts, swimmers, bikers, and runners. Hawaii was kind of a mecca for that. And they sat around one night and they argued about who was the fittest, the swimmers, the bikers, or the runners. And the lieutenant in the Navy said, you know what, tomorrow to Sunday, we have the day off. We're going to do an event where we swim this, there was a specific swim that they had done as a competition in that area, a specific bike, and then there was like the Hawaii Marathon course. And they said, we're just going to go and do it. And I believe there was no like sanctioning or anything of this event.
Right.
But they just went, there were like 10 to 15 people, if I remember the story correctly. And that's the way that they did it. And so henceforth, that is the way that Ironmans and triathlons are done. The other thing is that there's a lot of logistics that go into putting on triathlon races as opposed to like single discipline races where you can control a lot more. So for example, I am a lifeguard, so I've lifeguarded different triathlons and things. And the swim is really the most difficult part logistically. Right. Obviously, the bike and roads and things like that are also, the police have to shut some roads down and intersections and blah, blah, blah. But really the most dangerous part and the most difficult for the race organizers is, they have to have a certain amount of lifeguards for every person in the water. And they have to make sure that everybody gets in and out of the water, and they want to do that without a hitch. The swim historically is the most dangerous part of a triathlon.
That's right.
Exactly. It's the part where the most incidents happen, and they want you in and out of that water. And if you can't get in and out of the water, they want to know that as soon as possible. And that's why they kind of do it as the first thing. And literally, like if you go to an Ironman, a couple hours really after the event starts, the whole swim portion is like a ghost town. It's already over. Right. Everybody is in and out. There are cutoff times for the swim. And they just shut it down. And, the lifeguards, like when I, work a triathlon, I'm done by 8 a.m. or whatever it is, and they send us home. So that's a big part of it. They do not want to have people in the water for that long. And then the bike is also difficult. So for like a full Ironman distance, this is where the logistics kind of come into play with that. They do not want to have people riding their bikes after it gets dark. So for a full Ironman, there's going to be cutoff times for the bike. And after the sun goes down, they're going to know exactly when the sun is going to go down for whatever area you're doing your triathlon in or your Ironman. And they're going to want everybody off of the bike. They can have people run when it's dark. And if you see those, documentaries and stuff, you'll see people running with glow sticks until
headlamps,
pitch black. Yeah. So that's the main thing. They do not want people riding their bike in the dark. And that's generally why it is. And there are events. I just wanted to make this clear. Like I said, there are kind of niche events that you can find every year. I do a 5K run followed by a 400-yard swim. It is extraordinarily difficult, even for someone like me who trains for longer events, but it's just weird to run as fast as you can. And then you feel like a lead weight when you jump in the water. It's they do it every year as like a fun thing. And you'll find different events like this. You'll find like bikes to run to bike. These are called duathlons, but they're more niche. Triathlon is kind of something that a lot of people have embraced. So that's what you'll find more of. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd heard the safety, they want you fresh when you're in the water too. They don't want you swimming when you're already worn out.
Exactly.
It's just, that's where the risk is.
Yes.
So, does this affect the way you train? For myself, I am doing morning swims and afternoon runs. I'm not doing a lot of training on the bike. I'm doing a century ride, a couple of weeks before. I'm not worried about the bike training, but hey, let's talk training for a bit, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I'm just curious, so you said you don't really have a swimming background?
No, I am a terrible swimmer. So I'm a scuba diver, and I was able to pass the swimming requirements for scuba diving, but only by a hair. So I am working with a coach on technique.
Oh, perfect. Nice. And how's that going?
My progress has been really promising. But we started with the basics. We started just freestyle side breathing. I've got a pretty good backstroke, so if I get winded, I can always recover with backstroke. But obviously, you got to be able to see where you're going a little bit when you're swimming with however many other folks.
Yeah, for sure. Um, just so you know, like it tends to be that your story is the most common, right?
Hmm.
It's when people go sign up for a triathlon, the bike and the run, those are on land. You can breathe oxygen. You're
Right.
you're good to go, right? A lot of people are very uncomfortable with the swimming portion of it. Very few people will actually participate in their lives in like an open water swimming event,
Hmm.
just like it randomly. But a lot of people will do running events. A lot of people ride a bike, even in a group. So that tends to come more naturally. Myself, I was a decent swimmer. I do have some swimming background in high school. And what we tend to find is that any level of age group swimming, if it is sustained and consistent when someone is younger, creates like a game changing sort of effect when they get older. They tend to have a level of comfort in the water
Yeah,
that is extremely difficult to achieve. Your coach has probably sort of mentioned this to you, that it's kind of like learning to ride a bike, it's like learning a
that's
new
right.
language. When you get older, it's even that much more difficult. And we even see like elite professional athletes struggle with tons and tons of training time and just the amounts of fitness that most of us can only dream about. They still struggle
Hmm.
to find the level of comfort in the water that somebody who even swam, like let's say varsity swimming in high school or age group swimming as a youngster, tends to find. So for you, I'm just curious, like how many swims are you doing per week?
Right now, I'm doing two. I'm doing one with a
Nice.
coach and one on my own. And tomorrow is my swim day, so Tuesdays and Fridays.
Perfect. Yeah. So I've worked with a lot of athletes who, like they're just sort of getting into it. And I do find that swimming 2 to 3 times a week is kind of a sweet
Hmm.
spot to be developing. One time a week is sort of the bare minimum that I would say, like you would be prepared appropriately for an event
Hmm.
for a number of weeks, probably 10 to 20 weeks before like a sprint triathlon. And then if you wanted to really improve, 3 times a week is like
Hmm.
more, a lot of the training talk that we'll do right now, just to caveat for your listeners and for you, is going to depend on your goals and expectations
Of
at a certain
course.
event. So for you, I'm assuming that the main goal is to finish comfortably, to finish safely, gain a level of fitness where you feel like you've prepared appropriately.
Yeah.
That, coincidentally is always my goal in any race. Training for a couple of 70.3s this year. And I have no
Nice.
time goals. I have no place goals. My only goal is to prepare as
Just finish.
appropriately. Yes. Well, for me, like, yes, I would like to finish like strong, and
Hmm.
maybe set like a personal best time, but you can only control what you can control. For
Right.
the vast majority of us, like this is fit after 40, right?
Right.
Um, the vast majority of us are not going to have unlimited time to train. If I was to talk to somebody who was getting into triathlon and they were going to say, "Oh, I have to train like 20 hours a week or whatever," I would say, well, that's not going to happen probably. You know what I mean? It's depending on your lifestyle. So for most people, like I said, 3 swims per week is even a lot. It's a lot
A lot.
logistically. It's a lot with your family. It's a lot with your career, your job.
Hmm.
So I even know several like very very competitive triathletes who like win their age group and stuff like that, who are doing like 3 times a week. So that's a very appropriate. They're getting in very purposeful. They're doing very very um, goal oriented swims. They know exactly what they're doing. They get in, they get out, and they get back home. So that's really good. And for somebody like you, obviously you're
Hmm.
working with a coach, so I don't want to step on
Sure.
anybody's toes, but I would say a lot of drills, a lot of working on your feel for the water,
Yeah.
and then a lot of stuff that might simulate the kind of uh, pace or, like you said, the kind of skills that you're going to need, particularly sighting in a triathlon or open water event. So, for example, I would always recommend to people if they are training specifically for a triathlon or open water event, don't worry so much about your
Right.
pace time, like per 100. That's pretty much irrelevant. But try to do sighting somehow, even if you're like at
Sure.
a YMCA pool or something like that. Choose something to look at on each end of the pool and lift your head up at least a couple of times. And also get comfortable. I'm sure your coach might have told you with like a recovery kind of stroke, where if you can do like a breaststroke as sort of a recovery, if you can get comfortable enough where you can sort of be doing the breaststroke and having it be like a recovery where you're looking where you're going, if you're getting lost or something like that, that's really beneficial. So I would work on those sorts of things. And like I said, the training for swimming for you is not really going to be based on like gaining fitness, even though yes, you involve like large muscle groups. Swimming is an incredibly amazing, beneficial activity for a lot of us, particularly those of us that are getting older and we're worried about our joints and we have bad backs and we have pain and things like that in our knees.
No
I know a
impact.
lot of people, yes, no impact, low impact, right? So other than the fact that if you do too much of it, you can probably get you know, different types of things can go on with your shoulders, particularly if you're not that comfortable, if your technique
Hmm.
is not great. I had a ton of friends that I swam with when I was younger who were swimming 4, 5, 6,000 yards a day, and they all got shoulder
Wow.
injuries. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like it's like a very common thing with swimming. But again, they were trying to get D1 scholarships and stuff. You know, most people are not, and I wouldn't recommend going and swimming 6,000 yards at the pool. I would recommend like an appropriate build up to like you're probably doing 40-minute to an hour workouts and stuff like that in the pool. A lot of it consists of drills and warming up. That is totally awesome. That is totally appropriate for something like a sprint,
Hmm.
even all the way up to like a 70.3. When you start getting into Ironman distances, you're talking about being in the water for like 1 to 2 hours. I believe the
Right.
cutoff for most Ironmans is like 2 hours and some odd minutes. So then I would say you might have to start thinking about doing some longer workouts in the pool. But for
Hmm.
most, like you're doing the perfect thing. For most people, a couple of swims a week, trying to focus on your technique and building that is more important than the training of building fitness. So I think that's great. And then for
Yeah.
you, I would say like you said you're doing a 100-mile bike ride, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing some training for that. I'm assuming it's a lot of it is
Yeah.
crossing over to the triathlon training. It's going to make you feel very
Absolutely.
strong. Yeah. So the only thing that I would really recommend, and I would recommend this for anybody who is kind of like dabbling, maybe signing up for a sprint triathlon this summer. I feel
Hmm.
like I'm qualified at this point to give some advice for a
Yeah.
sprint triathlon. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah, I would say if you're going out for like a group ride, if you're doing like just a easy ride by yourself on a Sunday for a couple of hours, a great thing to do is just as soon as you get off the bike, just throw your shoes on and even a 800-meter run. I mean, something like literally a 4 to 5 minute run off of that couple hour bike ride
Hmm.
is really going to acclimate your body to be get ready for, you know, yeah,
Multi-sport.
exactly for what you're going to experience in the triathlon. So it's not going to be like so alien. And if you do that really even a couple times a week, that's going to get you really ready for what you're going to experience feeling in a triathlon.
Yeah. That's
Again, with the caveat that you are training for a sprint, so you're good to go. You're going to be done
sure.
in an hour and 30 minutes.
Right.
Somebody training for a longer event, there's definitely what they call brick sessions that are much more appropriate for training for like a half Ironman or an
Hmm.
Ironman. And I would recommend doing those. Like if you don't do those, before you do like a half Ironman, you are in for a world of pain. Like
Right.
they're just sort of like a requisite for that part of the sport. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But awesome. I think you're totally, I mean, for a sprint triathlon, what you're doing is going to be perfect. And I think you'll have
That's
a great
great.
experience, which is very important because what we tend to find again, or what I tend to find when I talk to people who have either come in and out of triathlon, is that if they have a bad experience with it the first couple of times that they do it,
They just don't do it again.
yeah, they don't want to go to a higher distance. They don't want to, commit more,
Right.
parts of their life to preparing for another event. And usually that is because they have not trained appropriately. I mean,
Sure.
I was a swim angel, so in different events, like they'll have people like sometimes I lifeguard for an event, but they also have like swim angels and run angels, which are people who basically come and I volunteer to just like swim around the people who are struggling in the swim and encourage them. Like,
Okay.
I would help out if they needed to do a rescue, but they have like specific lifeguards there. I'm
Right.
just more like, if you can do it, like let's do it.
Like a
And
pacer.
yeah, and I specifically remember I was swimming alongside a guy who was just like talking to me, but not having a good day. And he said very specifically, he's like, "Why did I sign up for this level of event?" he's like, I should have started with the sprint triathlon. And I always like tell that story to people to say, like, yeah, let's baby steps first, see if you can do this, see if you can commit to this training time. And then, you'll have a much better experience. And I think it will be like a much better involvement in the sport.
Right. So I had a question for you. And it's not necessarily directly triathlon related, but it kind of is because it's about open water swimming. And actually, my wife and I have signed up for a different sport, similar, a couple races called Swim Run. It's a European sport that kind of combines trail running and swimming. So the first one it's only like I think like 7 miles of running with 2.5 miles of swimming. And then we're doing one in the
And that's it.
fall. The fall that's 15 or 17 miles of running and 4.5 miles of swimming.
Wow.
And we're both pretty decent swimmers and we've swam a lot in the past. So the swimming's not a problem, but what we have never done really is the open water part of swimming. So, and our really only training area we have for doing swimming is just the Y pool. That's what we do. We literally go to the Bellevue Y pool and we, go swim a couple miles and that's what we do. But there's a lot of advantages obviously to pool swimming. I'm sure that you don't have in open water. Like you don't get flip turns in open water, so a lot of things that you got, the spotting and all those kinds of things. So how do you recommend people that have limited ability to swim in open water to train for open water?
Yeah, so this is a lot of people that are in this situation, right? Even me, like in the whole winter time, I would love to do more open water swims. And I have some friends who are really hardcore who will go in the water in like the middle of February in the Northeast, which I just won't, I'm not that interested in that. Even with a wetsuit, it seems horrible to me. But yeah, so I would recommend, and I think most swim coaches and triathlon coaches would recommend to really be very deliberate when you are swimming at the pool about citing something specific and trying to do it in like a very methodical way. What you'll find is that if you can get your head out of the water comfortably and then back in the water without like really breaking your stroke, that's going to be for open water, for lakes, for oceans, for anything like that. That's really what you want to try to do. And I'm sure that you've been doing it, and like you try it, but try to do it almost every, if you're going to do a swim, almost every lap, try to do it with a specific thing on the wall. And that's really going to help you to sight. The other thing that I would say is, for me at least, what gives me, and like I said, I'm a pretty comfortable swimmer. I'm an ocean lifeguard, all this kind of stuff, is when I go to the pool, I tend to get in the habit of doing swim workouts that were similar to what I did when I was a competitive swimmer, or at least like the cadence of that, which will be like, hundreds freestyle, or 200 freestyle, or different sets like that, which it's good for building fitness for sure. But what I've like recently tried to do is, yes, one of my swims per week can be like that, but another swim I really like to have no breaks. Like the main thing for me, at least, that's different from open water to competitive swimming, like that I used to do, is that you're just not going to be able to take a break, especially for you swimming in an event like this. I don't know what the logistics are of like where there's help and stuff like that for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, for most triathlons, they have a lot of lifeguards in the water, and even for like, I believe the rule in Ironman races, and most sanctioned races is that you are allowed to rest on a flotation device. You're just not allowed to make any progress with that flotation device. But
Okay.
again, like
Oh,
for most of us, I'm sure you're training, you feel like you're a pretty fit guy. You don't want to be sitting there on some lifeguard surfboard, like catching your breath. So what I do is like one swim a week, especially now I have a 70.3 that's coming up in like 9 weeks. One swim a week is going to be straight swim, nonstop, like as if you were doing like a run or something like that, where it's just like straight through. For, let's say, for me, a goal for that will be about 45 minutes. That's like way longer than I plan to actually swim in the race, but it gives me like a lot of confidence in my endurance to just be able to just swim everything straight through with no breaks, with no stopping. For you, what's the distance of the second one? It's like a 4 kilometer swim.
So it's a 4 mile, but so it's a different sport, and it doesn't function like a triathlon. So what you do
Gotcha.
is it's trail running. The running is trail running. You run in a wetsuit and you swim in your shoes
Oh,
because you're not actually able to change out
Wow.
during there's no changes, but it'll be like you run, then you swim, then you get back
Hmm.
out and you run more, and then you get back in and swim. So it's built into the course. I mean, the most famous one's kind of up in the United States is the Orcas Island one. So, it's ocean
Wow.
swimming and trail running. And I think
Yeah,
that's a
if
full one. So
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sure exactly. Like you said, it's a different sport, and it's in a specific. Every course is a little bit different. Every open water venue is a little bit different. So, what I would do is, so like if I was your coach, a good workout that I would make for you is try to figure out exactly around how much time you would estimate that it would take you for that swim, and
mhm.
do a progression workout, right? So like for me, a really good workout for like a 70.3, and like you said, it's a little bit different, but it's an open water swim.
Still open water swim.
Yeah, what I like to do is, so if I'm assuming, and I'm hoping that, let's say my 70.3 swim will be somewhere around 27 to 28 minutes, right? I want to do, after a warm up, maybe, or something like that. Go to the pool, and without stopping, maybe flip turns, maybe not. Sometimes I like to not do flip turns because it's a little bit different. But that exact time going from like a pretty moderate pace up into like a kind of hard pace. You understand what
Hmm.
I'm saying? So it's like
Yeah.
you start out what feels almost like too easy for swimming for 30 minutes straight. Like this is like just loafing, but then progressively, without stopping, without taking any breaks and sighting, go faster and faster and faster until I'm at like a pretty hard, not
Yeah.
super hard, not killing myself pace at the very end. And I feel like that's always like a really good workout to feel that you're building that endurance. Like you want to be feeling like you're finishing
Mhm.
super strong at the end of the exact amount of time that you're going to be spending in the water. So I think that would be like really good confidence booster, and also good. Again, I'm not like super familiar with that format of racing, but like for open water swimming, if you're going to be swimming, let's say for an hour,
Mhm.
which is, you're probably going to swim more than an hour,
Yeah.
but I would say going to the pool and saying like, okay, I'm going to do 2 hours straight through, no stopping. Obviously if you have to stop to like, go to the bathroom or something, but like basically straight through, no breaks, as if you were swimming like there. And you can do that in a pool. Could be very annoying if you're like sharing a lane with somebody or something like that.
Yeah.
Could be super boring if like that's just the nature of swimming. But like that's something that would give me a lot of confidence going into something like that.
so intervals. It's
Good.
it's 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 same as
Yeah.
interval training. Whether you're doing sprints or hill intervals on the bike, I mean, it's the same concept, right?
But like
Kind of.
one interval. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Like for me, when I
Okay.
go to the pool, I like doing intervals because it's so like I'm so used to it. I'm so accustomed to
Hmm.
that. And I know that it really builds my fitness. I was a pretty decent swimmer. And I know that doing like, let's say 20 by 200 at like a fairly fast pace on, let's say 30 seconds rest is like, it's like a huge fitness booster.
Hmm.
And like that's a great workout for sure. And I would be proud of myself when I do stuff like that. But for me, especially when it comes to like building endurance, and for an event like that, that's, going to take you like a very long time in the water,
Right.
like really kind of trying to figure out how the race is going to go and try to really prepare for it in a way that's almost like a rehearsal for that sort of thing. And I like doing that. Um, like I said, if you want to get a little bit more into training for like a specific type of
Hmm.
triathlon training that most people would recommend, doing different types of race simulations like that, almost
Okay.
every coach, almost every triathlete will recommend to do something like that. Even for you, for a sprint triathlon, I would say you're doing all the things you need to do. I wouldn't do any different type specific training. For Tony, again, I would really, just make sure you're comfortable with all that gear. But also for Chris, it's like, you know, the actual event, you want to be making sure that you're comfortable with all of the gear and transitions that are
Sure.
the exact things even nutrition, even for a sprint triathlon, like, nutrition is a huge part of, like, let's say Ironman distance racing. It's just a whole animal unto itself. And, you have to be on top of it. Otherwise, you're going to have a horrible experience.
Sure.
But if you're doing a sprint triathlon, you also don't want to be like stopping by some gas station and getting like a power bar that you'd never tried before, like those sorts of
Oh,
things. You know what
get
I mean?
sick.
Because exactly, you want to make sure that you have tried out like all of the nutrition that you're going to use on race day. Even for a sprint triathlon, you want to make sure that you've had the amounts of macros, the amounts of whatever products that you're going to be using before the race in the exact amount that you're going to have before the race, so that you don't have anything like weird ruin your event. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So for you, I would say like a couple of weeks would be a good distance before like a sprint triathlon, even up to like a week, because the sprint triathlon is not like that much taper that you need or anything for that,
Right.
especially if you're not looking to like win the event or anything. But if you just kind of pick out like sort of what you're going to do that race morning, say like, okay, 2.5 hours before the event, I'm going to get up, I'm going to have my oatmeal, whatever it is that you have. I recommend something like that, like a fast
Sure.
digesting carb, like some type of oatmeal, maybe like some peanut butter and bread toast. Some people
Absolutely.
like different things, but like something substantial a couple hours before the race. Then before the race, I would top that off with something like sports drink,
Yep.
with full carbs and stuff like that. If you're going to do caffeine, some people like that, some
I do
people don't like
caffeine.
that. Exactly. You want to do that
Always.
like exactly the same type of caffeine, the same amount
Sure.
of milligrams of caffeine. And you want to really be like timing that out and say like, okay, I'm doing this. I would recommend about 30 minutes to an hour before your race, start taking in however many milligrams of caffeine you're going to be taking in. And then if it's going to hit you, it's going to hit you like half an hour to an hour
Sure.
after that. And then do your almost exact race at your almost exact pace. For a sprint
Right.
triathlon, I would recommend like full.
Sure. Yeah, I could do
It's
the whole thing. I could do the whole
yeah,
thing to practice for it. It's not like a 70.3 where where you'd
yeah.
have to block out a whole day.
It's tough with the swim sometimes. That's the
Yep.
only thing that I find even myself like very logistically difficult, is like, what am I going to do? Am I going to go to the gym and then I'm going to have
It's going to be in a
my
pool.
bike in the car and blah blah blah. So I try to find different ways to do it, and if I can't do it, I have a total gym. If you have like anything that can sort of simulate even doing like a certain amount of push-ups or something, if you can't get to the pool and have it logistically be like the way that you're going to do it, is fine. Or you could do the swim like a little bit before and then drive home and then do like your bike
Right.
workout on your bike. And then just see if that's enough and all of the things are not messing with your stomach in any way. If you're going to take in a gel, I would say like, a good one gel with sports drink is more than enough for
Yeah.
a sprint triathlon. For most people, that's going
Absolutely.
to be taking them about an hour and a half. And then you just like, you make sure. And like you said, when you're getting into like 70.3 and longer distances, then that becomes like more of a consideration to make sure that you're knowing exactly what you're going to be taking in, exactly where you're going to be getting it from, exactly how it's going to affect your stomach. Um, and that's all things that like, if you are getting into it, there's a lot of information online, but you sort of, and you can work with a coach and you can work with
Sure.
different people, you can listen to me, but you really have to sort of figure out for yourself based on trial and error, like what's really going to work for you. I had a friend one time and she was like, a lot of the athletes now, Kevin, they're taking in 100 grams of carbs. It's 100 grams on the bike per
Sure.
hour. And I tried that a couple times and I just can't do it.
It's a lot.
It's exactly. So that's not for me. Some professional maniac might be able to do that and it might benefit them. But for me, I find, for like a 70.3, that like more of a reasonable 40 to 60 carbs per hour is about what my
Sure.
body can tend to take
It's
in
what you could process. Right.
and seems to benefit me and seems to be enough for me to feel like I'm not bonking.
Yeah.
So in the 70.3s that I've done, I've had other issues, but nutrition has always been pretty good for me.
So what is your training regimen for the half Ironman? What are you doing in a week? You're
Yeah.
9 weeks out, so you're right in the midst of it. You're not
Yeah.
tapering yet. You're not warming up. You are in the thick of it. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think about that a lot as I, postpone my workouts because of weather and things. And I have to
Oh,
just,
the weather has
the
not been
race.
cooperating in
Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
it's the same thing when we had these horrible storms, and I'm like, the race is not going to like push back because I didn't get my, runs in, and I have to get some more runs in. But basically my training regimen, um like most people, I really try not to do that much more than like a reasonable fit person would do in a reasonable amount of time. So for example, for me, I try to limit myself, and I'm a teacher. I don't have,
Sure.
I do have some level of flexibility with a lot of my time, even in the afternoons. So what I try to do is limit myself to 60 to 90 minutes during the weekdays. And then I try to limit myself to about like 2 to 3 hours, no more than that on the weekends. So I try to get in 3 rides per week, 3 runs per week. And then, like I said, I've been trying to get in more swims. As a former swimmer, that's kind
Right.
of a double-edged sword because I can get away with doing less. But I really try to get in 3 runs and 3 rides per week. The only thing is the complexion of those rides and the intensity and all of that is going to vary greatly throughout the week. So for me, I really try to front load my week with like higher intensity and lower volume workouts.
Okay.
So like for example, my Tuesdays and Wednesdays tend to be like hard bike workout, but it's only like 45 minutes,
Sure.
maybe an hour. But it's
But
like
at your
I'm
threshold.
destroying myself. I'm falling off the bike.
Hmm.
I have my bike set up over here. I
Sure.
usually use Zwift. Sometimes it'll be like a race on Zwift. Now that I'm more into the training, I'm structuring it myself a little bit more. So I'm doing like you said, threshold or even above threshold,
Right.
like VO2
Just
max type stuff
go to
where I'm just
failure.
like, yeah. And indoors, it's safe. You can do that.
Right.
And then like the next day, I'll do a run. That is, I'm still not doing like a ton of super hard running, but I'll add like 30
Hmm.
second pickups, strides, stuff like that. And then when I get to like Thursday, Friday, my bike workout is a little bit longer, but a much easier intensity. So it'll be
Sure.
like around what I want to target for like a 70.3 pace, which obviously is not a VO2 max. It's something like 20-minute intervals or something like that at a pace that I can sustain relatively comfortably, that I could think if
Hmm.
somebody was going to give me $1 million, I could hold this for like probably 2 3 hours, but
Sure.
it's not easy. So that's what I'll do for those days. And then for me and for most people who are training for like longer distance events, your weekends are where you'll do like a longer
Right.
um ride, a longer run. And I'll usually do that on like a Saturday. And I'm trying to get up to doing like more 2 hour rides. I have done very
Right.
few of those this year, probably not enough, but those are at almost like no intensity.
Like a zone two kind
Boom.
of thing. Yeah. For those who know the heart rate zones, it's zone two
Easy.
workout. Right.
Yeah. What you
Sure.
would consider easy, but you're still working. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
not a recovery. It's not like you're just sliding down a hill. Um, and the difficulty with those is, or the intensity is more because of the volume of them. Like
Right.
even if you're doing an easy ride, if you're not riding that much, I can tell you to go and do the easiest you can for 3 hours. And the next day you're going to be sore because 3 hours on a bike is
It's
difficult,
still three
and you have to
hours.
get used
Yeah.
to it. Exactly. And then the next day I'm trying to progressively build out my run. For you, like I said, if you're training for a sprint triathlon, I would, you know, if you're going to run the run, people can walk, run and stuff. I wouldn't,
Yeah.
that's cool. I don't want to diminish anybody's
It's a 5K.
accomplishment. Yeah. If you want to run the whole run, I would say you want to get to something where you're comfortable doing like, let's say 5 to 6 miles of running without stopping at the pace that you
Sure.
want to do for the race on a weekend. And that's basically what I'm doing. And I try to get my swims in at this point on the weekends because it's just easier
Okay.
logistically to get down to the pool. But again, I think what I'm going to try to do is slot 1 or 2 swims in during the week as the weeks go by. And then I
Sure.
really try to get in a couple of strength workouts per week. What happens this time of year as the sort of training for the swim, bike, and run ramp up is that my trips to the gym to say like do squats and things like that and deadlifts,
Right.
yeah, it's going to become less and less. But I try to supplement that by doing like at home body weight stuff. I have a total
Right.
gym here. I have some kettlebells and stuff. And I think doing some of that, lunges, body weight work,
Sure.
stuff like that will help you to maintain if you've been doing some strength workout over the
Right.
winter, which a lot of triathletes do, a lot of athletes in general sort of do that
Yeah.
in the wintertime more. You can maintain a lot of the gains that you made, and you can also keep yourself feeling strong and fit because as we get older, it becomes more of a consideration to try to keep the muscle strength, and to
Use
try to
it or
keep
lose it.
ourselves. That's what it is, and it is tough because it feels like, oh, I'm doing all this stuff, of course I'm fit, but if you're not doing strength work, I do think, yeah, as you get older, it is something that almost all of the experts on YouTube, almost all of the people that you
Yep.
talk to who are experts in this type of a field will say that there are huge benefits to keeping your strength up for longevity, for
Yep.
keeping yourself injury free. And even
Absolutely.
if you're like me and you want to be like more competitive, you're trying to win your age group or whatever, they do say that there's a lot of benefits to your actual performance.
Absolutely.
To Yeah, for sure. So I would say for me and for most people, like I was going to mention that there's different for the different levels of triathlon for the different
Uh-huh.
distances. There's different levels of commitment to training, right? And there's a range that I think is like appropriate to kind of think about. So for a sprint triathlon, if you're a reasonably fit person,
Hmm.
you don't even have to do almost any type of specific fitness training. Like you said, you're working on your swim because you're not super comfortable with it. That's a consideration for a lot of people. But you know how to ride a bike. You can ride your bike for 30 minutes, some odd minutes that the race is going to take you. You can run a 5K. So you don't need to build any fitness per se. You just need to maintain like your level of fitness. So for somebody, I tell people all the time, like my coworkers and stuff who are like, oh, you do those triathlons, blah, blah, blah. I say like, just do it. Just, go to a sprint triathlon, bring your bike, bring your whatever kind of
Yep.
bike you have, bring your shoes and just go and do it. And then, yes, if you want to get better, if you want to get to the top of the podium, even at like a local sprint race, you might have to put in some more specific training. But
Sure.
the type of hours are like, yeah, if you're a reasonably fit person, you don't have to think about that. When you get to like Olympic distance and 70.3, for the vast majority of people, if you want to prepare yourself appropriately, around 5 to 10 hours of very
Sure.
like specific purposeful training
Very targeted.
across
Yeah.
exactly across the week is probably what's appropriate. You can do more. Like for me, when I get over 10 weeks, or 10 hours per week, I feel like that's a lot for my body. And I feel like some
Yeah.
of it is diminishing
It's a lot for
returns.
anybody.
Exactly. And then when you're getting up to the Ironman distance, which is, it's kind of a whole nother animal. For most people, you're looking at 10 to 20 hours a week of training. I would say right in the sweet spot for a lot of people is around like 12 to 15 hours of training to prepare appropriately for a number of weeks before your event, a few months, depending on where your fitness level is at for some people coming into like a full Ironman, depending on your goals and like your expectations for the event. So if you're looking to break 10 hours in the Ironman, then you're looking at like 15 hours or more per week. If you're just
Sure.
looking to finish an Ironman, I know plenty of people who have like on 10 hours a week have finished. I mean, I had a friend who showed up to the Ironman that I did. God bless him. He did no training for it. It was not a super fun day for him, but he was a reasonably fit guy and he knew how to ride a bike and he was a former swimmer. So he was able to finish. But again, I wouldn't recommend that. That's not super
Right.
appropriate. Yeah.
It's not a way to enjoy the event. Even when we're talking about type 2 fun, that doesn't even sound like type 2 fun. So you were talking about cross training and kind of the strength training. And for me myself, I do a lot of single leg stuff. Cycling is a sport that I'm really into, so it's part of my routine anyway. Doing a lot of the like split squats and goblet squats and stuff. So what do you like for your cross training type of workouts?
Yeah, for me, like I said, in the winter time is more when I'll like go to the gym and kind of hit the heavier weights and a lot of the recommendations now from training programs and things like that are to hit weights heavy. Even if you're training for endurance events, at least at some point during the year. And what I like to do, this is, like just my own personal preference, is I like to go heavy on like a leg press. just because I feel more comfortable with it. It's like if I'm going to go heavy on a squat, I'm not like a super bodybuilder, and I know you don't really have to be, but like if I'm loading up and I want to do like, let's say under 6 reps heavy, you're talking about like a lot of weight on your back, and I just don't feel super comfortable with that. So I would recommend to people like a leg press at the gym is probably a great way to load up, enough weight where you feel like you're
Sure.
really moving something. Even deadlifting, again, I'm not super comfortable with like deadlifting like tons and tons of weight, 300-400 pounds, whatever. Like you will see
A lot
some
of
cyclists.
injuries.
Exactly. It's just, to
A lot of
me,
injuries.
as much as a lot of people are recommending doing these heavier weights and that you can get a lot of benefit from it, especially as you get older and you're trying to keep your muscle strength and mass, I feel like I get plenty out of like doing machines. I do some deadlifts, but I like to do variations of them. So for example, one thing that I really enjoy doing now is like single arm deadlifts with like a reasonably heavy dumbbell. And what a
Okay.
lot of people are sort of recommending with some of this stuff is that if you're doing stuff that is just on one side, it also becomes like kind of a core workout. You're training a lot of your stabilizer muscles. I'll do like a farmer's walk, where you're just kind of like walk around the gym with 2 different weight dumbbells, and you will really feel that you're getting like a functional training sort of a thing from those. I do like walking lunges, a lot of those sorts of
Yeah.
things. You'll see a
Yeah. I
lot
like
of
that too.
really popular triathletes and stuff, professional elite triathletes doing things like planks. You'll see them doing things like different types of core and stabilizer work with Bosu balls and medicine balls and stuff like that. Those are like really big in the community right now. Again, there are fads that kind of come and go, and we've all been around a long time. We've seen stuff like that, but that core work, trying to do some strength work, especially like stabilizing and stuff like that, is going to be good. And then, like I said, I try to get that in, but it doesn't always. Getting to the gym sometimes for a lot of us is very difficult. So sometimes I'll just do that with body weights at home. Doing like 10
Yeah.
minutes of planks and some body weight squats and wall
Sure.
sits and stuff before you go to bed. You can be holding your kid on your lap or whatever. It's a cute Instagram post or whatever. A lot of that stuff can really benefit you long term, and you can fit it into your schedule. If you are looking
Sure.
to really increase your performance, particularly on the bike, but even like running, a lot of these guys are doing like more and more weight and strength work. If you're looking to be at the pointy end, then you might want to look into one of the programs that people are giving more for building power on the bike.
Hmm.
Again, I would love to win my age group. That's kind of my goal right now. But again, I don't want to risk injuring myself. I would rather finish, 10th in my age group and be like totally injury
Sure.
free and not risk anything than do stuff like that. But I do really recommend that people get that in. I recommend it to myself. I should remind myself of that more, because some weeks go by
Right.
and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't do any of that. But it is a very beneficial thing. And it doesn't have to be hours and hours and hours. It can be something that
Right.
you kind of fit into your lifestyle for sure.
Put it into your day, right? Do you think there's any utilities? I've seen those swimming machines that are cable machines that kind of simulate the freestyle stroke. Are those just gadgets, or do you think those are really helpful in training?
Yes and no. They're kind of both.
Right.
So I have a couple of friends that use those, and they sort of have the same, that are training for like 70.3s that I'm going to with them. And they're kind of like, they have my same philosophy of it, which is it's very beneficial in the sense that you're doing something, you're stimulating those muscle fibers. And if you're doing, let's say, one
Sure.
swim per week because you're extremely time crunched, doing that for 20
It's better than
minutes
nothing.
Exactly. You're going to be stimulating the muscle fibers. It's not, for someone like you, it's not going to substitute building some technique with the water. That's
No.
like probably the most important thing for you. But
For me,
for
yeah.
somebody like me, I use my Total Gym, which is very similar. It's got, if you've
Hmm.
ever seen a Total Gym, Chuck Norris uses
Sure.
it, whatever. Or they have like the gadgets, like you said, that they sell on Instagram and everything. Because I'm comfortable in the water, I do think it benefits me because it just allows me to kind of, stimulate the same muscle groups that I would be using in swimming a little bit more. I probably use it too much as a crutch to not get to the pool as much as I should. But yeah, I think it is really beneficial in that way, but not a substitute for swimming, especially for somebody
Right.
who's just getting into swimming. Go to the
Right.
pool. That's the main thing that you want to do.
Because for me, the swimming part is far more mental than it is a question of fitness. I mean, it's 800 meters. It's not a long swim. And really what I need to do is get my technique dialed in. And when I have that, I think that my basic level of fitness is more than ample to finish it. Now, if I get into some longer distances, the conditioning may become a more relevant consideration.
Yeah, but you would probably, just if I cut you off for 1 second, you would
Yeah,
probably invest in a triathlon wetsuit at that point.
I have one.
Yeah. Oh, and you're going to use it in sprint?
I am, yeah, because, well, first off, a sprint is not my end goal. I hope to, whether it's next year or the year after, I do hope to do a 70.3. And so I did go ahead and buy the wetsuit. Actually, I had, this is kind of a neat transition here. I'm a scuba diver. I have a scuba wetsuit, and I thought, oh, I'll just do it in that. And that's not an option. Maybe you could talk about the differences in those wetsuits while we're on the topic, because they are very
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, so a triathlon wetsuit versus, let's say, like a surfing wetsuit. I actually did a
Right.
similar thing the first couple of times because I work at the beach in the summertime, and
Sure.
I know a lot of people who surf and stuff. So I'm like, oh, I'll just wear like a wetsuit, like people wear wetsuits, right? People surf in a
It's not
wetsuit,
the
and
same thing.
exactly. So a scuba diving wetsuit, a surfing wetsuit, the difference is in the texture and the material of the neoprene that you're using. So
Yep.
a triathlon wetsuit is built purely essentially for buoyancy. Yes, there is some like level of like insulation and warmth that you're going to get if you're swimming in like a cold environment, but they're not built for that. They're built for speed, and they're built for buoyancy, and they're built
Right.
also for like range of motion so that you can like work your shoulders and everything in it.
Right.
So if you are planning on doing a triathlon or open water swim, you definitely don't want to be using an inappropriate wetsuit. I would say also, for those people, and you can probably attest to this too, the wetsuit makes the swim a lot easier, especially for people who are non-swimmers because of the buoyancy.
Hmm.
It's like night and day for most people, including myself. If you're wearing a wetsuit, like a triathlon wetsuit, you're flying through the water. You're feeling like it's almost effortless for most people, even people who are not super competent swimmers. So if it's something that really is concerning you, I would say talk to somebody, maybe even try out a
Right.
wetsuit if you can. It's probably
Yep.
difficult to do that, but if you have like a tri club or something where someone is your same size, you can say, "Can I try that?" For an open water swim with them, or maybe even at the pool. And you're going to see that it really, really changes the game for a lot of people. I say, if you are not comfortable swimming, probably you will be if you put on like a specific
Sure.
triathlon wetsuit. And yes, it is a little bit of an investment, but like you can find definite deals that companies give every year. You do
Yeah.
not have to buy a $700 wetsuit. The ones that are like $100 to $200 are totally fine for most
Sure.
people. And that really is something that you should definitely look into.
Yeah, so one of the big things I noticed was as I started to really focus on my freestyle technique. If you've never been scuba diving, you don't use your arms for your swimming stroke when you're scuba diving. You've got big fins. Your legs are your engine, and that is not the case when you're freestyle swimming. And the scuba wetsuit, constrains your arms. I mean, you don't have your range of motion. You can't do a freestyle stroke. And then the other thing was the way that the triathlon suits weighted. It keeps your legs closer to the surface, which makes your kick more efficient. So
Which is most
it's
people's
game
problem.
changing.
Yeah.
It is game changing. And while we're talking about gear, now I'm going to do this triathlon on my road bike. I've got a Specialized Roubaix is what I ride. It's an endurance frame road bike, but they do make triathlon specific bikes. What's the difference?
There is a road bike that, like the one that you have, which has drop handlebars and has a frame that you would see in something like the Tour de France or your local group ride.
Sure.
It's just sort of a regular bike, right? Now, of course, those bikes can get more or less expensive based on, what you're looking to do, or how much money you have to spend. But a regular road bike just has sort of flat handlebars with drops on them.
Yep.
And you sit on there and you sit up and you ride. That's a regular road bike like you have, like you're specialized. A triathlon bike is very specific to triathlon, or what they call time trialing, which is a type
Yep.
of riding that is designed for the bicycle and the rider to go as fast as they can across a given distance. So in triathlon, obviously we have different distances of triathlon. And for you, let's say it's a 10-mile bike ride, or would you say it was a 20-kilometer bike ride? Um, if you were looking to go as fast as you can in that race, you would want a bike that is like the most aerodynamic, the most attuned to just going fast. You don't really need it to climb a mountain. You don't really need it to, be in a group. You don't really need it to do any type of like specific technical stuff. And so the way that they build these bikes is with what they call aero bars. Some people might call them like bull horns or something like that,
Sure.
built in to the actual bike itself, and that's how it is meant to be ridden by the rider, right? So all the geometry of the bike, all of the ancillary components to the bike and everything is meant for the rider to be on the middle of the handlebars, hunched over, on these aero bars where you hold on to them and you have like elbow pads and you're kind of scrunched up in like this time trial, what they call a time trial position, and it's
Very
designed to
aggressive.
go. It's very unsafe as well.
Yeah.
So I'll get to that in a second. So it is a position that is not designed for safety. It's not designed for handling at all. You're not even near your brakes on most bikes. So it's extremely unsafe to be doing like that position in a group ride. Do not go down to your friends and stuff like that. On a group ride, they will get mad at you because it's unsafe. You can't stop the bike very fast. It's really meant for events where you have a long stretch of open road and you can get into this aerodynamic position on the aero bars and you can just push whatever pace you want to do. And there's like nobody around you that's going to be like a danger. So you don't have to worry about stopping or swerving on the bike or anything like that. Now, for most people, including yourself, almost all people, a time trial or a triathlon bike, once you actually like train on it and learn how to use it, is going to be a faster bike. I would even say 100% of people. If you're using it in the correct way, you're going to get a speed benefit for the same amount of effort or power that you're putting out, right?
And on the correct terrain.
Yes.
Because they don't climb as well as road bikes, do they? Is that debatable?
It depends on the road bike. It depends on the triathlon bike. It depends on the rider. But if yes, on a flat road, almost 100% of riders
much
in
faster.
the TT position are going to be faster, and that is why you will see 100% at this point of professional triathletes, people trying to win races, people who have high stakes races, will be on a time trial bike, will be on the TT bars for as long as they can during the race, because it's just going to be a faster position, right? However, it's important to remember that you do not need, and nobody needs, a triathlon bike to go extremely fast, right? Here is what I recommend for you and for anybody who's like thinking about doing, let's say, a sprint triathlon and either has a road bike or is thinking about just like getting into fitness. Do not go out and buy a triathlon bike, even a used triathlon bike. It is just not a good idea to do as your first investment for a bike in almost any situation, right? What you want to do is you want to get a road bike that is appropriate for you, an appropriate price point, something that you're comfortable with. Don't go out and buy a $10,000 bike. You don't need that. You can have like a, very nice entry-level bike or a used bike, as long as it's safe. And you slap on some aero bars, clip-on aero bars, which are literally the least expensive upgrade that a triathlete can ever buy, right? So once you put on those aero bars, which you can find on Amazon for $20, or probably one of your friends has them that they could just give to you, it's like just such a cheap thing. You can get into that time trial position on your road bike. And, if you don't believe me, you can go on to YouTube and find tons of videos that will explain this to you and prove it in a $10,000 wind tunnel or whatever they do. you're going to get 80, 90, somewhere around there of the actual benefit of speed that you would be getting from getting a $5,000 to $10,000 road bike or a
Hmm.
triathlon bike on
Sure.
your road bike. So that's all you really have to do. 80% or more of all the wind drag, the aero drag is your
Sure.
body's position. So
Yep.
if you can get yourself into a nice position on your road bike with some TT bars, that's like perfect for you. You know, what tends to be the issue is that, let's say you, Chris, wanted really to do a 70.3, right? Like, let's say you have so much fun at your sprint triathlon. You're like, oh my God, Kevin, I got bit by the bug just like you did. This is like the most fun that I've had in fitness in like a long time. The community is great. I love it. I want to do a branded Ironman 70.3 and I want to train for it the right way. And I want to do the best I can. You know, maybe I'll do good in my age group, whatever, but I really want to do it right. At that point, I would say, let's start looking at specific triathlon bikes that might be
Sure.
appropriate for you. And the main reason is not speed, right? Yes, the triathlon bike itself, the frame is going to be faster than most road bikes, but the main reason is fit and integration. So, like, for
Hmm.
example, a lot of the triathlon bikes that you're going to see now, um, they have things that are going to help you to be more comfortable. They have boxes where you can put your gels. They have
Right.
things where you can keep all of your spare tubes and things that you're going to be
Sure.
bringing all of your stuff in an aerodynamic way on the bike, so it's not like sticking out somewhere, and it's all in there. And most importantly, you're going to be able to get into that time trial position and hold it because the bike is made to be in that position. As much as you might go fast for 20 minutes on your road bike
Right.
in the TT bars, that's not what it's meant for. And
Sure.
if you were going to do it for 100 miles, you would probably die. I mean, it would be crazy. Your back would be horribly
Right.
in pain.
The
Your,
geometry is just not set up for that.
exactly. A TT bike or a triathlon bike is set up for that, and you can be on there for 2, 3 hours. Believe me, it is not the most fun in the world.
Ah,
You know, I still am, struggle with it sometimes, but my bike is totally made for me to be pushing
that's great.
power on that position for longer periods of time. And uh, it doesn't have to be the fanciest time trial bike or anything like that. There are plenty of, I would recommend to a lot of people to kind of look right around that entry level TT bike price point, which right now for like a lot of manufacturers is like $2,000 to $4,000.
Sure.
Because just, if anybody's listening to this and they feel like they're getting some good information, the best advice I can give you is that after a certain price point for almost any gear that you're going to get, especially a bike, you get diminishing returns after a
Absolutely.
certain point. Exactly. And for bikes, that tends to be about $3,000 to $5,000. A $5,000 bike is probably going to be just as fast as a $12,000 bike. And they do sell $12,000 bikes. I know some
Oh,
people
they
might
do.
be having a heart attack right now.
They do.
But
They do. I was looking at
yeah,
one. I was looking at one earlier today that, if I had somebody else's credit card, I would love to buy it.
that's what I was going to
Um,
say. If you're Mark
yeah.
Zuckerberg, and I do text message Mark Zuckerberg sometimes on his Instagram or whatever, leave a comment, and I know he's getting into fitness and everything, and I'm
Yep.
trying to convince him to do an Ironman. If you're Mark Zuckerberg, go and buy a $15,000 bike. Have
Sure.
fun, do your thing. But if you're like us,
Yeah.
and you don't want to spend your kid's college fund or whatever on your bicycle because that's not cool, you
Right.
probably want to be looking right in that like lower level price point, and you're going to get a
Sure.
lot of the benefit, almost 100% of the benefit, depending on how you like
Sure.
integrate all different things into your bike. And again, I know you'll probably give out my socials and stuff like that. If you have more questions, I
Yeah.
definitely love to talk about this stuff as much as people
Absolutely.
want to talk about it.
Where can people find you? I know that you're active on Instagram. That's where there you and I linked up. What's your Instagram handle?
Yeah, it's at Kevin_Eric, ERIC_Clark, CLARK. So Kevin Eric Clark with an underscore in between both of
Yeah,
them. You can totally find me on there and I will answer any questions. Like I said,
that's
I
great.
love to talk about this stuff to the point that, people at work and stuff probably find me pretty annoying,
That's right.
but that's fine. That's why I was like, oh, I'll definitely do a podcast with these guys if they like this sort
Yeah.
of stuff. I love this sort of stuff. And you can also find me on Strava. I'm gonna try my best. I was gonna say when we first started chatting that you do stuff with like sound mixing and stuff like that. I would love to do more YouTube videos. I want to do some more
Yeah,
race reports. I know like a lot of people are doing that for their triathlons, especially,
sure.
but like different races and stuff. I'm committing to myself. I do not care if I literally finish in last place in my 70.3 that I'm doing in June. I am going to make a race vlog on my YouTube channel. That is like more of a goal that I have than finishing the race. You know, it's like I always think about
That'll
doing
be
that.
fun.
Exactly. But then the race comes around and you're like, oh my God, I got all this other stuff
You
going
get
on. I
caught
didn't
up
do
in the
enough
race.
filming.
Yeah,
Exactly. But it's so nice because I think a lot of people, like, for example, this conversation that we're having, I think a lot of people will get motivated, inspired, educated by this. And that's
sure.
like, that's the whole game. Yes, I would love if I had 10 million followers and they bought me
Well,
this,
wouldn't
you
we
know,
all?
exactly. They sent me new bikes to my house and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And we would all love that. But really, like when I see someone or I get like a message from someone who's like saw me do a 70.3 on my Instagram and they're like, you know, I've been thinking about that and I'm really going to do it. Like, I think for those of us, like you guys probably can,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, connect with this and resonate with this is like, that is the greatest feeling in the world.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And you know, for the record, I'm with you on this year. I'm gonna make more. I'm gonna make more videos. It's fun. We're in some beautiful scenery, and we get caught up in it. I mean, yeah, you want to stop and smell the flowers, but it's also fun to record some of it to revisit yourself and to share with others. So you know, I bought the camera drone. I've got the GoPro. I've got all the toys, and I love to play with them. So it's a
Are
lot
you,
of fun.
are you gonna do a race vlog for your triathlon?
Probably not for the first one because I'm afraid I'm going to look like that. I don't know if you've seen that YouTube video of the girl who thought she was in her fitness influencer phase. So I'm going to let the first one go, and then if I don't look like a complete fool, if my wife isn't laughing at me when I finish, then maybe I'll do it for the second one.
Okay, but I at least want a detailed race report on your Instagram. I will
Deal,
be happy with nothing less than that, Christopher.
deal. Absolutely, absolutely.
The
Okay,
school teacher voice
Yeah,
coming out there.
that's
exactly.
right.
Yeah,
And And
but
you'll get some good video and pictures from Mount Rainier where we're doing the Wonderland Trail here in a
That's
couple of months.
right.
Lots of fun content coming up, so
awesome.
be no
So
shortage of
yeah,
that.
you guys and anybody else, feel free to send me messages. I am totally open to chatting, and I want to hear how all your guys' events go this year for sure.
Fantastic. And same, I want to
Sounds
hear
good.
about that Iron Man. So,
Awesome.
but
So
pleasure
yes, let
talking
me
with
know.
you. Yeah,
You
absolutely.
too.
Thanks for
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
joining
much.
much.
Good
us.
hearing from you.